broadcast. This time I am showing 3 games that I played as Ira against ArcboundGeek, who is playing Kayo. So Arcboundgeek is another content creator in the Flesh and Blood world. He's made a bunch of videos and stuff, and we were talking after a tournament, just an online armory event that we both played in last week. He said that he had a KO deck that he thought could be competitive, and he wanted to try it out, maybe do it as a collaborative thing. So he was actually streaming his perspective of this earlier. I recorded my perspective and am going to broadcast it now with my commentary. So I am playing Ira, and fair warning, I'm not an expert on Ira. It's certainly a character that I've played before, but it's not one. I would say that I have a lot more experience on Dorinthia or Kasai, so my apologies to any Ira experts if you are offended by my mistakes in this video. If you actually notice anything that I'm doing wrong, please feel free to point that out so that I can improve on a class that I do not normally play. So for those of you who may not know what Kayo does, Kayo is sometimes I've referred to him as the dice roll brute. And the way that Kayo works is that if you have a attack that has strength 6 or more, when you do that attack, you're going to roll a die. And if that roll ends up getting a 1, 2, 3, or 4, you half your damage. But if it's a 5 or a 6, you double your damage. So that's a little interesting fact there. It makes him higher variance. He also only has 19 life, I believe, but it can be high reward. You know, if you're doubling the damage on a Command and Conquer, that can be nasty. Okay, so let's get to this. We played 3 games here. They were pretty quick games, just some blitz rounds here. Currently, we're rolling to see who goes first. I think we rolled the same number as each other like 3 times. So a little pro tip. If you want to have the start of game procedure go faster, one thing you can do is roll 2 dice at once instead of 1, which has a reduced chance of you guys rolling the same number. And another thing that you can do is you can roll 1 die and have one person pick odds or evens. If you're picking odds or evens, that is going to give you that means that there isn't any chance that you're going to both roll the same number, because that's not the way that you're doing it. Okay, so we are facing off here. I'm on Ira, he is on Kayo. Now you'll note that I've equipped Gambler's Gloves. Normally Ira wants to play Breaking Scales, but Gambler's Gloves are important in this matchup because with the way that that hero works, he has a 1 in 3 chance to get double damage and a 2/3 chance to get half damage. And if he rolls an attack and gets that double damage, using your Gambler's Gloves to make him reroll is very worth it. Because even if the reroll does not let's just think about it like this. Let's say it's a strength 6 attack. It's being doubled to strength 12. You do your reroll, and it ends up being strength 3 instead. So you actually just saved 9 damage by using your Gambler's Gloves. Now, someone will say, but it doesn't work every time. It only works 2/3 of the time. It's true. Gambler's Gloves only works 2/3 of the time, but if you multiply that 9 by 2/3, you get 6, which means that in expectation against a strength 6 attack, you are going to be saving 6 damage by using that Gambler's Gloves against KO. It's extremely strong to do this, and it's in fact so strong that I recommend that almost all Blitz decks run Gambler's Gloves in sideboard, because if you do run up against KO, Gambler's Gloves are what you need, and most decks typically have free item slots anyway, so they can afford to do that. All right. So I'm starting off here. This is a little bit of a weird turn. I'm actually going to pitch this E-Strike because it's the only card that I have in my hand other than the Flick Flack that is 0 cost and will give my Kodachi go again. And because I want to be attacking with the Kodachi, but I don't care that much about the other stuff, I am just going to want to put the E-Strike out. I'll get it later in the game, and I'm going to try to put that Flick Flack in Arsenal. So my opponent blocks the second Kodachi attack with his Skullcap. That would be a good thing to do if I had like a big attack coming. Under the circumstances, I think it would probably be better to just block with a card from hand, because typically when you're going second, because you're going to redraw, you can afford to spend those cards in hand. However, I do think it's possible that he is concerned about getting hit simply by fatigue in this situation, or by some big attack that he wouldn't be able to defend against. It looks like he had a Sigil in hand, so maybe he had some other stuff that was not going to be able to block, and he was worried that I would have more stuff coming in. In any case, he ends up taking 1 damage from my first Kodachi, going to 18, but he plays a red Sigil of Solace and goes up to 21. The end result being that he is now above me in life, which I am actually fine with because I have a copy of Life for a Life in hand. Then he's going to pitch and just swing at me for 3. My hand is actually quite poor here. So I have an all-red hand. I do have the Flick Flack in Arsenal, but I kind of want to save that. Ideally, that's a card that I'm going to be able to have waiting there to stop a potential barraging beatdown without using another card from my hand. Putting 0-cost defense reactions in Arsenal is often a very good move against Brute, in my opinion. So I'm going to pitch the red Soulbead Strike. Now, I could have played this, but I decided to pitch it instead to get a reliably better turn. So I pitch the red Soulbead Strike, and then first up, I swing my Kodachi for 1. He blocks it with his armor, and then I'm going to play the Life for Life. Now, this does technically have Go Again. The problem being that I don't have any energy because it was an all-red hand, so there's not really much that I can do with it. However, it is coming in for 5, and if it hits, I'll heal 1. Life for a Life, some of the more recent decks have not been running this. This is something that the New Zealand players have been running in Kodachi. Or I'm sorry, I said in Kodachi. What I meant was in Ira. For instance, I know that Jacob Pearson and Matt Rogers were both running 2 copies of Red Life for a Life in their decks at the Calling Auckland, and it can be a very strong card in multiple matchups, and in the Ira Mirror in particular, it can be quite strong because if you do it as your second attack, it's coming in for 5. That's a very awkward number for them to defend against. And if it lands that hit, it's going to heal you 1. And in a matchup that's about getting all those little small advantages and eking out, a point or 2 of damage here and there, the potential heal for 1 is quite good. Now, my opponent uses the Scab Skin Leathers, I believe, and gets a 5, which means he'll get 2 actions. He spends the first action to play a copy of Tome of Fyendal, so he's going to draw 2 cards and then heal 5. Pretty good. So healing up to 21, that's definitely something that you're happy to see. And now he has a big hand with which to attack me. I have a pretty decent hand myself, but with my opponent having all this stuff, I think there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to put it to much use. So Tome of Fyendal, classic card. Play it from Arsenal, draw 2 cards, and heal 2. He then is going to play a Sigil of Solace. He's going to heal additionally. Both of our decks here have a decent ability to heal up and just prevent more damage from getting through. So this is kind of interesting. I think that Ira really benefits from that because she wants the game to go long so that she can grind out the game with those Kodachi. And then my opponent, my opponent's Kayo deck. Also, I'm not sure about whether or not it wants the game to be long or short necessarily, but it might want to find its combos. Now, 2 barraging beatdowns are coming in, which is really annoying for me. It means that this next attack is going to be majorly buffed if I don't block it with at least 2 cards. And the question is, do I want to do that? What's going to happen here? Will he have any more intimidates for me? It looks like he will not. So he plays a copy of Massacre. And so this is just coming in for 6, I believe, but it will potentially have that intimidate effect to hit me for even more stuff. Pitching a yellow Cadaverous Contraband. He rolls, though, and gets a 3, which means that it's half damage. So it's only at strength 3, but the 2 barraging beatdowns still take effect, so I decided to block with both of my cards from hand, just because I don't want to take the extra damage from the beatdowns. And on my turn, I'm going to have an at least decent turn in terms of aggression. I'm going to be able to use the, Kodachi, Torrent of Tempo, not bad. And if he doesn't block any of that, I will get a Mask of Momentum trigger. Mask of Momentum doesn't actually trigger very often against an experienced player, but the threat of it is very serious. It's kind of similar to Dorinthia's Dorinthia's +1 counter, actually. I think that normally the threat of the +1 counter is relevant a lot more than the +1 counter itself is. Similarly, the threat of Mask of Momentum giving you that card draw is often going to be more relevant than the actual amount of cards drawn. So first Kodachi coming in for 1 with Go Again, he doesn't block. Second Kodachi coming in for 2 with Go Again, he blocks it with armor. This is a classic gameplay move to just disrupt the Mask of Momentum. And then I'm going to play the Torrent of Tempo for 5, and if it hits Go Again, there is a chance. So right now, looking at this situation, if I'm him, I might just block with one card. I'm not sure. The reason that I say that is that there's a chance that the card that I have in Arsenal can be played with that conditional go again, but there's also a good chance that it can't, in which case this is basically just damage. However, Mask is pretty or a Torrent of Tempo is pretty efficient when it comes to just damage, like 1 for 5. Blocking for 3 is on curve, plus you have a relevant ability, so pretty good. He ends up deciding that he's just going to take all 5. That's okay. Whittling him down. So my goal here is to survive what he's doing, keep chipping away. Eventually, I'll be able to make some kind of big attack turn, probably by using I don't know, maybe I'll get an E-Strike. I know I have that E-Strike that I pitched early on in the game that will eventually come up. Maybe I'll create something with the Snapdragon Scalers that's going to give me some big go-again opportunities. But my goal is to keep chipping away and then eventually kind of turn the corner and start becoming more aggressive, try to get him out of there. He, meanwhile, is going to just pitch and throw out a Claw. Now, I'm a little surprised by this when he does this, because it looked like he was saving his cards in hand in order to do something big, and then his actual turn was not very big. I'm fine with just taking the damage there because I have a very aggressive turn of my own. So I'm going to do Kodachi for 1. With this hand, I'm going to be able to do 2 Kodachi swings into the Enlightened Strike, into the Command and Conquer here by using my Tunic, and I think that is going to be very strong, throwing out not just a lot of damage, but also that potential on-hit effect from Command and Conquer, depending on how he defends this. So he blocks the second Kodachi, and then I'm going to throw out the CNC. Now, I could do like CNC 7 or CNC 5 draw a card. I ended up doing CNC 5 draw a card to preserve my Snapdragon Scalers, but I totally could have done CNC 7 here or similar. Now he reacts to me with a Reckless Swing, and he does discard a card that costs that has 6 or more strength, so I take 2 damage. But I'm really happy about this because now it means that he doesn't have anything in hand, which means he's going to eat this Command and Conquer. So he blocks all but 1 damage from the E-Strike, but now the CNC coming in, and this is a position where I feel like I am gaining a big advantage with this sequence of plays. And indeed, the CNC lands, and it destroys the second copy of Tome of Fyendal, which I am very happy to see go. So that's going to be a big win for me. Not only did I do a bunch of damage this turn, he blocked with all the stuff that he had in hand and lost his card in Arsenal, which would have been some more healing. So I think that turn was extremely favorable. Unfortunately, I don't have a great turn for aggression to follow up. I draw a very defensive hand. This is one of the weaknesses of Ira. So Ira has really good defense, but her offense, I am going to be able to do at least 3 attacks. So I can do Kodachi and one of these small attacks. So it's not as if I'm doing nothing. But there is there's a pretty good chance with Ira that you just are going to draw a non-aggressive hand because you have so many cards that do not really offer any strong offense. Like you have all the blue combo cards and then all the defense reactions on top of that. There's just a pretty good chance that you're going to draw some kind of non-aggressive hand with some of these builds. And you can adjust that. There's things that you can do. So in this turn, I end up doing Kodachi. Kodachi finds center. Finds center does not have its combo enabled, so it's just coming in to offer some more damage. He ends up blocking a bit, going into his next turn with 3 cards in hand. And then I'm going to take a look here. So once again, not the most aggressive hand, though I do have a Soul Bead Strike that's maybe going to let me do some stuff. Metagod says, hey, what's up, Metagod? How you doing? All right. He rolls the dice for Scab Skin Leathers to see how many action points he can get, and actually gets a 6. So that's going to give him 3 action points. Now, under some circumstances, I'd be really concerned. But as I've become more experienced playing against Brute, one thing that I've noticed is that often the benefit of rolling a 6 is not that high relative to rolling a 4 or a 5. So Scab Skin Leathers lets you roll a die, and you gain action points equal to the number that you rolled divided by 2 rounded down. So if you roll 1, you have 0 action points. If you have 2 or 3, you have 1 action point. If you have 4 or 5, you have 2. And if you have a 6, you have 3. Now, the problem with that, though, is that actually the using it costs an action point. So if you roll a 1, your turn just ends. If you roll a 2 or a 3, it's just basically a normal turn. And then you have to roll a 4 or more to actually gain from using this. However, you can use it every turn. Metagod says, tired, got an event today, just a single match. Kinda just want to sleep instead. I've been playing your warrior build for Blitz and doing pretty well. Well, thanks. What have you found? What have you found has been good or bad for it with that deck? I'm curious as to what your experiences have been. So on this turn, he comes in with an attack and he rolls a low number on the doubling thing, and so it gets halved instead. I end up blocking with the Flick Flack that I have in Arsenal, my goal being to replace it with the Springboard Somersault that I have in hand, which is going to be a strong option. Now, Springboard Somersault, not run in all Ira decks, but I think it's a good addition. I think that it's... so if you look at like Jacob Pearson or Matt Rogers' deck from the Calling Auckland, I think that, which is what I'm kind of basing this on, I think that Springboard Somersault is one of the first cards that you're going to want to add in order to improve your Dorinthia matchup against Tall Dorinthia, like the deck that I was using and that apparently Metagod has also been using. So I just think that's a strong one to include. And the thing that I like so much about Springboard Somersault is that it can block for 4, and yeah. Metagod says, it seems that it is much better at taking out the Ira and Kano builds. However, I find that is only the case if I get good aggressive hands turn after turn. If I whiff on a draw, my chances of winning dip. Yeah, one thing that I actually find kind of helpful, which might sound crazy, is that sometimes it can be a good idea to actually use those copper tokens to draw more if you get like some kind of janky all blue hand. All right, on this turn, my opponent is just going to throw out the old Mandible Claw. So the way that Mandible Claws work, by the way, so Mandible Claws are 2 energy for strength 3, which is not good, but they conditionally get go again, which is very good. So basically, if you have, I think it's if you've discarded discarded a card with 6 or more attack, if you've discarded a card with 6 or more attack this turn, Mandible Claw gains go again. So on the really big turns, it's excellent. Pairs very well with Blood Rush Bellow. But on turns like that, the Romping Club would have been better to just swing at me for 4 instead of 3, and it probably would have chipped a bit of damage through. I ended up using that Springboard Somersault that I had in Arsenal to stop the Mandible Claw, which was non-efficient. So I guess actually the club would not have chipped some damage through. But the reason that I did this is that I now have another Springboard Somersault, which I'll be sending in. So I do Kodachi, Crane Dance. He doesn't block, and I play a Razor Reflex to give it go again, which also means that my Mask will trigger because he hasn't blocked any of this, and then I'm going to follow that up with a Whelming Gust Wave, but it's a blue Whelming Gust Wave, so it's only 1. So in that case, Mask did hit, I did get the trigger, but it's going to give me an additional 1 damage this turn. Now, if I had drawn like a Torrent of Tempo or something like that, it could actually be really good because I could have activated my my Tunic to play that and then been a lot more threatening. But you know, the Mask Momentum, like I said, you're not going to be triggering it that often, and quite frankly, when you do trigger it, it's not always going to be reliable. You know, there's a fair chance that you're going to get something that's just not really very exciting, because this deck has a lot of defensive cards that are just not all that good. So now he's going to go for a big turn. It's time for Blood Rush Bellow. So Blood Rush Bellow is one of the most core cards for Brute. I would say it's probably the second most core card, with the most core card being Barraging Beatdown. And basically, Blood Rush Bellow is you're going to discard a card from your hand. And if the card that you discard, so first off, it gives all your Brute attacks for the whole turn plus 2 strength, which is good. And then you discard a card, and if the card was 6 attack or more, then Blood Rush Bellow is going to gain go again, and you draw 2 cards. So typically, now it's very risky to play this and then miss it, but yeah. Normally people have like set up their hand or pitched in a way that there's like a 100% chance to hit when they play this, because it's so negative to lose it when it's one of your main attack cards. But it has been known to happen. So currently it's 16-1, which is a life total that I'm very happy with. I'm going to be able to just chip away at him with those Kodachi, but he's going to be doing a really big turn. So he ends up going, so this is a Mandible Claw, and this Mandible Claw is actually going to be strength 5 and go again. So this is when the Mandible Claws are really good. Basically, they are a lot better than the club on a Blood Rush Bellow turn, but on normal turns, they aren't quite as good. So he comes in, I do a red Flick Flack to block for 4, and then if the next card I defend with is a card with combo, it'll get +2. So that means that I'll only take 1 damage from this, and it will buff up my next. It will actually buff up my next block. So he's then gonna break his Barkbone Strapping and roll a die, and he gets half the energy, half the roll in energy. He rolls a 2, so that's gonna be 1 more energy. So he could come in with the other claw, which I'm pretty worried about, but we'll see what happens. Metagod says, I actually got crazy lucky against one Ira where I was drawing full blue hands for the first 3 or 4 turns of the game. My Ira opponent took me to 1 where he was at 16, and I had burned through half the blues in my deck already. Okay. And you managed to come back from that? Is that what happened? That's pretty wild if so. Let me know what happened. I'm curious to hear that story. All right, so then a Barraging Beatdown comes in to intimidate me. So one of my cards is intimidated, and then I have to defend with 2 cards, with 2 non-equipment cards to avoid this next attack getting a damage boost. And then he's going to come in there with a second Mandible Claw, and this is a blue Barraging Beatdown, so if this is defended by less than 2 non-equipment cards, it will only be +2. So I end up deciding here that I'm going to block, I think, just with the Rushing River that I have in hand. Wow. Metagod says, yeah, I got lucky on the next draws with Iron Song Determination, Steelblade Supremacy, and was able to attack and overpower red 2 turns in a row. That's wild. Man. I mean, the best turns with Dorinthia are extremely hard to stop. That's true for a lot of decks, but you know, if you have the ultimate attack hand, there's not a lot that can beat it except tons of defense reactions. So my opponent is then going to finish off this big series of attacks by doing a larger attack, and he rolls and gets a 6. So the Savage Feast is going to be double strength and come in for strength 12. I really dislike that. It's not at all what I like to see, so I'm going to use my Gambler's Gloves to make him reroll. And he rerolls, unfortunately, into another 6, so I'm not going to get the big benefit there, and it looks like it's time for me to block on up. I think I block here with the Flying Kick, and I'm not sure if I block with the Mask also. I do have the Springboard Somersault and Arsenal still, though, so I'm going to do Flying Kick on the defense, and then I think I throw in the Somersault also, blocking 7, so I'm only going to take 5. But, you know, quite a powerful turn. Even with a lot of defense from me, I end up taking a lot of... Or actually, it was 13. I'm sorry. I thought it was 12. It was 14 because it was buffed by Blood Rush Bella also. So I actually take 7. So pretty wild turn there. And even through very heavy blocks and a defense reaction in Arsenal, I end up taking a lot of damage. So I have a Sigil of Solace, but I actually pitch it. So the reason is by pitching the Sigil of Solace, I'm going to give my Kodachi attack go again, and I can do 1 Kodachi and then use my Tunic to do the second Kodachi. And because he's all the way down at 1 life, he's going to have to block against both of these unless he has a heal. And by forcing him to block against these, I'm going to get cards out of his hand, which I think is going to do more to impede his ability to attack me than healing for 3 would. So my goal here is just to create some problems for him, make it a situation where he has to block. I'm kind of trying to keep him here in what is sometimes known as the Kodachi zone, where you're able to force the opponent to block even these small pokes from Harmonized Kodachi, and thereby get into a winning position. So he does block the first one, as expected. Second Kodachi coming in, he blocks that one as well. So he's now down to just 2 cards in hand, 1 card in Arsenal, but that's still a fair chunk. And I draw up for my next hand. So he's going to pitch here, and it's actually a Command and Conquer, which is potentially going to be double strength. He rolls up the die and gets a 3. So it's actually going to be half strength, so strength 3 Command and Conquer. Then he's going to use his Gambler's Gloves to try to reroll, and he gets it. So it's a strength 12 Command and Conquer. Under some circumstances, this could actually be lethal, depending on what I had available. Luckily for me, though, I'm going to be able to block 6. I am going to take 6, but I use my Sigil of Solace to heal for 3. So I end up alive, and the reason that I'm doing this is that I think it's important to maintain my Kodachi pressure. I could have blocked with that other card and kept another 3 life, but I want to keep him having to use card after card to defend against my Kodachi. So then pitching and swinging the Kodachi, First Kodachi coming in for 1 with Go again, and then I'm going to be able to swing the second Kodachi for 2 with Go again. Both of them very easy to stop, and I have no expectation of actually getting through and killing him, but I expect that I'm going to make him use cards, which is all I really want. So if I can get cards out of his hand and limit his aggression, my hope is that he'll eventually have to do something bad and unaggressive, like if he does like just pitch and swing the claw, for instance. I'm very happy with that, and my hope is that sooner or later he will have to do something like that, and I'm going to be able to do a larger attack of my own. Life for a life in hand, that's a pretty good one. Flick Flack Red. So he throws out a Savage Swing, which is strength 7. He's rolling to see if it goes up to strength 14. And rolling it up, he gets the 5. It is going to be doubled, strength 14. So this is, once again, a situation where I'm going to have to defend extremely heavily. And so I spent some time thinking about this. So I have 2 2-blocks, 1 3-block, and a 4-block in hand. So if I use the 3 and 4 blocks, that's 7, and then I can do 8, 9, 10, 11 with the other cards. I can potentially also use my equipment to defend more. So by using, I don't want to die here, but I think I'm going to have to go into Reckless Swing range, because there's really not that much that I can do other than, just defend heavily. Metagod says, RNG KO so scary. Yeah, KO is one of the most luck-based heroes, because you are going to be like literally rolling the dice to see if your attacks are really good or really bad. So in this situation, if we imagine a scenario where he rolls low, and this comes in for 3, there's a lot of things that I can do, and I'm really not very concerned about that. But the fact that it is coming in instead for 14 is going to be a much bigger problem. So it's definitely a situation where I feel like I am going to be hard pressed. But it's interesting because in a scenario where a lower number was rolled, this could be a moment where he loses a lot of pressure. And that's kind of the issue with KO. Your big attacks don't consistently generate pressure. And the reason that I say that they don't consistently generate pressure is that there's always that chance it's going to be half damage and the opponent blocks it with a single card from hand and goes aggressive. I end up blocking hugely. I think I blocked 12 here. Yeah, so I block 8 and then use the red Flick Flack. I think this was maybe a slight mistake. I think I probably should have blocked with Mask before Tunic. And the reason that I say that is that my Tunic would have been at 2 energy now, and then on the next turn it would be 3 energy, and that 1 energy could potentially be quite impactful. Whereas at this point I'm kind of assuming that I'm not going to be able to get 3 hits in a row for Mask, simply because his life total is so low that it is very unlikely that, he would have to heal and then I would have to score 3 hits in a row, which are not necessarily going to happen. So now he's going to come in with a Cadaverous Contraband. So if this hits, you can put a non-attack action card from your graveyard on top of your deck, coming in at strength 5. This is going to have to be a double block. Metagod says, I once played against KO and they got so lucky. They got first turn with Blood Rush and hit me for 12 after blocks. Then their second turn, they intimidated my whole hand and hit me for 18 in Blitz. Yeah, so, if KO gets lucky enough, he can basically just kill you, and there's not a lot that you can do about it. But he lacks consistency. And, it's kind of a war between powerful but inconsistent and just plain powerful. Ira is a lot less explosive than KO, but she's a lot more consistent than KO. So we'll see if that consistency can get me the win. Now, my opponent did heal, I believe, with a yellow sigil. So he went up to 3. I blocked his Cadaverous Contraband with 1 card from hand plus the Mask. So then this second Kodachi is coming in for 2, which is potentially lethal. And then my plan is, there's basically 2 things that I can do. So the first thing is that I could try to use the Razor Reflex to try to get the kill. And the second thing that I could do is I could play the E-Strike here for 7. And I'm not sure which approach is better. It kind of depends on what you expect the opponent to have. I know that some KO decks have been basically control decks that are thinking, because my attacks are not consistent, I want to be quite defensive and just give myself enough opportunities to get lucky that eventually it will grind them down. So against that type of deck, you might well be in a bad spot if you go for the Razor kill, simply because there's a fair chance they'll have a defense reaction. This deck's a little more aggressive, and I think it might be a good idea to go for the This deck's a little bit more aggressive, and I think that it might be a good idea to go for the Razor Reflex here just to go for the kill. But spoiler alert, that's not what I'm going to end up doing. So he blocks there, and instead of playing the Razor, the problem with playing the Razor is then I can't play the CNC because I need to have that card to put to the bottom of the deck. So instead, I'm going to play the CNC for 7. And I think this is actually a mistake just because of the risk of getting killed by Reckless Swing. But we'll have to see. So CNC 7, the good part about this is he has to block with 2 cards, and he'll still take 1 damage. But he's thinking about blocking with 3 cards. So if he blocks with 3 cards, it does save him that 1 life. So it takes him out of the Kodachi zone for the first attack. It also is going to help him cycle his deck faster if he does have another Reckless Swing. However, it's possible that he's only running 1 copy of the card. He's thinking about what to do here. Or, well, it's at least theoretically possible. You know, I actually don't remember what his deck list was. I don't remember if it was 1 or 2. But Reckless Swing is a big factor in these matchups. It's kind of like Steelblade Shunt in that it can kill you with defense reaction damage, which can't really be stopped. But Reckless Swing is actually more consistent than Steelblade Shunt in some ways because Reckless Swing applies to any type of attack. It doesn't have to be a weapon attack, and as a result of that, you can counterplay Steelblade Shunt by just doing attack action cards. But the Reckless Swing isn't subject to the same counterplay. The problem with it is that you do have to hit a attack that has strength 6 or more with its random discard, but you can often set that up by blocking with everything else to get those out of your hand. The only problem is that if you have a card that can't block, like a potion or similar in hand, it can be very awkward. So my opponent comes in with a claw. I block the claw. I'm going to go in for the 2 Kodachi. He blocks both of them. And then I could do the Soulbead Strike, or I could pitch and do the drone. I end up doing the Soulbead Strike instead, because in this situation with my opponent at 1 life, he has to block with 2 cards either way. And this will let me arsenal a card. And he shows me, though, that his other card in hand is an Energy Potion, which means that he cannot block the extra point of damage from the Soulbead Strike, and he will die. So quite a close game here. I ended up almost collapsing under the weight of those heavy attacks in the mid game, but I did manage to stabilize at 1 life and eventually wear my opponent down with the storm of Kodachi hits. So we ended up playing a 3-game series. This was I believe the longest of the 3 rounds, and then we're gonna do 2 more of these for more testing. This time we're gonna swap roles, so he'll be going first, and I will be going second. So first game, I ended up prevailing, but it was quite close. If he had a second Reckless Swing there that he had been able to draw, he could have potentially killed me, depending on what else was in hand. I think I did have another Sigil left in there to heal because I had pitched it to go for those 2 Kodachi swings on that other turn. So there is a chance that I would hit my Sigil before he hit his Reckless Swing, but by no means guaranteed. And yeah, we're going to see what happens now. So round 2, Kayo versus Ira. Now, I actually really enjoy playing as Ira. I think that she is a fun character to use. She's quite strong, and I do think she's very widely played right now. But I have to say, I think she's a cool and fun character. I don't think she's... I think she's strong, but I think she's, strong but fair, so to speak. She doesn't have, so there are some decks that I think are strong in a way that isn't very interactive or interesting, and I think Ira games tend to be very interactive, which is something that I like about the character. Even though I do think she's very strong, I think that games with her tend to be quite interactive in a good way. I think that Flick Flack is maybe a bit too strong. I do think that it causes a lot of problems for decks that are going wider, like Kasai, who I quite like playing. But yeah. Alright, so my opponent comes in with a big old attack and rolls up a 1. So this is coming in for strength 3. And I'm like, well, okay, Savage Swing coming in at strength 3. I'm going to block. Brewtapcast has raided with a party of 1. Thank you for the raid, Brewtapcast. Dig Dug with the raid emoji. Brewtapcast with the raid emoji. Thanks, guys. So you actually came in at a very good time because I've just started the second game of the 3-game series here. So this is my Ira versus ArcboundGeek's Kayo. He was testing out a new deck, wanted to play it against Ira, and so we did it as a sort of a collaboration. He streamed his perspective on these games earlier, and now I am redoing them with commentary here. No, I am done. I'm done playing against him for now. But this is gonna be me showing showing the games that we played earlier this afternoon. Shout out Dig Doug 420. Thank you for the follow. Also shout outs to Viva 611. It's Yo Huck. JW Ryan 77, Skooma Party, and Remmers 86, who have followed since the last stream, I believe. So thank you guys for the follows, much appreciated. And yeah, Kodachi, Crane Dance. So unfortunately, throwing out some of the weaker attacks there. I could have gone with the Razor Reflex there for Go Again. I believe he blocked my second Kodachi, which made me not want to do it. If I had been threatening the Mask of Momentum as well, I might have done that, but that's not the situation I found myself in. Another Savage Swing coming in, and he rolls the dice. If he gets a 5 or a 6, this will be doubled. If he gets a 1, 2, or 3, it will be halved. There's the 1. Half strength coming in at strength 3 because it's half strength rounded down. Block for 3. Definitely a situation that I enjoy seeing. This is kind of, earlier we saw some situations in the first game where Kayo was generating much more pressure than he'd be able to do normally with the strong dice rolls, in particular with that huge turn from the Blood Rush Bellow. But this game, he's done 2 attacks thus far, and the dice have not been with him. So this time I'm actually going to play out the Razor Reflex just for the extra damage on this Kodachi. Not something that I normally like to do, but I just want to clear it out of my hand. And then I also use a Sigil of Solace to heal up to 23. So I believe it's now 15 to 23, which is certainly a spot that I quite like to be in as Ira. But I've got to watch out because, he's made those attacks and the dice have said no pressure. But pretty soon the dice could tell him something differently. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a situation that you got to watch out for. He pitches and throws out a Command and Conquer for 6, and he rolls, unfortunately, the half damage. That's going to be 3. So I am going to be able to stop a Command and Conquer very easily, which is not something that you normally get to say. Blocked with 1 card. Now, if he had rolled the other side of it and gotten a 12, that would have been extremely dangerous. I think he debatably should have used his Gambler's Gloves on that, actually. I would have countered Gambler's Gloves, of course, if he had, in fact, doubled it. But Kodachi coming in for 1. Blocked by the Skullcap. Kodachi coming in for 2. Some damage lands. And then pitching the drone to play a Flying Kick for 7. Flying Kick, big damage. Big damage card, strong one for Ira. Double blocked here, but 1 damage will still get through, putting my opponent down to 15 life. So, well, he does have a fair amount of healing in his deck, so I accidentally put a Kodachi on the bottom of my deck, and then I thought I put it on top, and I flipped the top card, accidentally showing him that I was going to have a Flick Flack, so derp. I gave him some information. Then it turned out it was on the bottom instead. A bit of a gaff there. So he knows I have a red Flick Flack now, I think, except actually I don't. I guess it was a blue Flick Flack, whatever. Anyway, he goes in for another Command and Conquer. And rolls a 3, another half damage. I think that was just a joke reroll, like a rage reroll. He did not actually use his Gambler's Gloves, just coming in for 3, and I block for 3. So this time Kayo is really mistreating him in some ways. He's done 4 attacks now. All of them have been half damage, including both of his Command and Conquers, either of which would have forced me to be in a lot of trouble. Metagod says, throw the dice off the table. Yeah, I know. I know of like a gaming superstition where people will like get rid of their dice and use new dice and stuff if the previous dice are viewed as failing them. In miniatures wargaming, sometimes people will get out other dice to roll if they're using a first set of dice and they're getting really bad luck with their armor saves or whatever it is. Sometimes people will get out a second set of dice and hope that those will succeed instead. There's a lot of weird superstitions in miniatures gaming. So this is a basic turn for me. Kodachi into, I actually forget what this card is called, but it's the one that's 1 for 5 and it has some combo effect that isn't relevant. Someone who, I think it might be Pounding Gale. I actually don't know. I legitimately don't know what that card is called because I'm not an experienced ninja player. Magic God says I need to start doing that. All my dice are terrible. Yeah, I don't think it works. There's so many. So on my opponent's turn, he just plays an energy potion and draws up, and then I'm gonna come in with some attacks. Kodachi, Kodachi. I play a life for a life for 4, and if it hits, I'll heal 1. And I actually, it doesn't have go again here, but I do have the Snapdragon Scalers available. Yeah, so I use the Scalers, so he takes 4. I think I may forget to heal here. I would, no, I don't. Just kidding. Yeah, heal 1. So Snapdragon Scalers giving me the go again. And then I'm going to pitch. I could do a second life for a life, or I could pitch life for a life and use my Tunic to play Drone of Brutality for 6. And I go for the bigger damage option because I think putting pressure on him is more important than the potential healing right now. So then pitch and Drone of Brutality for 6. He's at 8 life. I am at 24. And so he plays a Sigil to heal 2, Yellow Sigil of Solace. And then I'm still coming in for 6, though, so I'm putting a lot of pressure on his life total here, which is something that I quite like to do. And meanwhile, I'm kind of sitting pretty on my large amount of life from the healing with the Sigil of Solace and the copy of Life for a Life. Because my opponent has kept rolling those low dice, it means that the attacks that have been coming in against me are just really not doing enough damage to put pressure on, and I've been able to often defend a big attack with just 1 card from hand and then do some attacks of my own. He ends up taking the damage there, going down to 4 life. I am up by 20, which is it's a tough spot to be in. It's a tough spot to be in for Blitz. And then he goes for a pitch into a Mandible Claw. I'm a little surprised by this because I would think that I would tend to think that he would, because he wasn't blocking because he was trying to keep stuff in hand for a bigger turn, but it's possible that he was trying to just keep stuff in hand to try to set up the ultimate combo with Blood Rush Bellow or whatever. So I just defend with the Flick Flack that I have in Arsenal here in order to preserve attack options. And I'm going to then probably try to put that red Flick Flack into Arsenal that we'll have to see. I can do pitch, and then I can pitch the Crane Dance, do 2 Kodachi swings, and then pitch the Torrent of Tempo for the flying kick here, coming in for a huge amount of damage. On the subject of dice and miniatures superstitions, I remember in Warhammer 40k, people used to say that you should not... There was a weapon called a missile launcher, and people used to say that you should not call it a missile launcher because missile launcher has miss in the name. And if you call it a missile launcher, it's likely to miss. So instead, you should call it a rocket launcher. This was like an actual thing that people believed in that game, to at least, like, it was a joke, but it was kind of not a joke. All right, so then Kodachi into Flying Kick. He has to block the Flying Kick with 3 cards, which is pretty good for me. And so now we are going into his next turn, and he actually just passes. I have a kind of non-aggressive hand here in some ways, but I'm still going to be able to do some cool stuff. So Kodachi. He heals against the first Kodachi. So he played a yellow one, healed 2, and then took 1, so he net gains 1. Then the second Kodachi. Blocking with a card. He's got 2 cards in hand. And then we're going to come in here with the classic E-Strike. It's an E-Strike 7, and I believe that's actually... Or no, it's an E-Strike 5, go again. And then I follow that up. He uses Reckless Swing against it and has to Reckless Swing away a Blood Rush Bellow, which is presumably the card he was trying to save. And then so he takes 1 there, and then I follow up with this dumb... I forget what this card even is called. Whelming Gustwave Blue from hand for another 1, which is going to close out the game. So that was a very rough game for my opponent because his poor dice rolls on his big attacks meant that he was just doing almost no pressure. I actually didn't take damage that game. I was holding off everything he was doing with just like 1 card block at a time, and then getting very aggressive. So that was a very unfortunate game for my opponent. And at the end, he was trying to save some stuff to do a big turn, but I was able to keep up the aggression, and I didn't let him do it. So then we're going to do one more final game, and this time we roll to see who goes first. I win and decide to go first. I actually don't know if that's right, but I want to try it. So I have an odd hand here with some big aggressive cards, which I actually don't want to see yet, but we'll see how this goes. Metagod says, I only lost 7 out of 8 of my plasma-wielding Marines in a single turn by rolling a 1 on all of them. Only equals once. Yeah. So in Warhammer 40,000, plasma weapons have a chance to overheat. In the new edition, they only overheat if you use a overcharged power setting or something that's also more powerful. My opponent generously lets me take a tunic counter here, which I had totally forgotten. But yeah, so then he blocks with armor. And I'm like, okay, he's blocking with armor on the first turn. That probably means that he has something really cool in hand, which I'm kind of worried about, quite frankly. So I think about actually doing the Enlightened Strike here to try to force him to block and get whatever the cool thing is out of his hand. But I think I end up not doing that. I think I go with just the more basic plan, on the grounds that there's a fair chance that he could just, if I do E-Strike and he's trying to do Blood Rush Bellow or something, there's a good chance he can block with everything else, still have the Bellow. There's also a chance that he's just blocking wrong. I end up pitching the other card and swinging the second Kodachi. He blocks that one with his Skullcap, which is, so he can hold that off, and this also worries me. This also worries me about the potential really big turn. But then he's actually going to come in here with a Wrecker Romp. And this is a Wrecker Romp, and it discards a random card. And then this is really powerful if he rolls a high roll. So that's how this deck works, and this is definitely a card that's going to do that. I think this is a red Wrecker Romp, so it's actually strength 8, and then he doubles it to strength 16. Yeah, so strength 16. I use my Gambler's Gloves to try and prevent him from attacking me for strength 16. He's accidentally flipping it instead of rolling it. If you hit F, it flips instead of rolling, so we reroll. And thankfully, it's a 2, which means it's down to strength 4. But he counter rerolls with his own Gambler's Gloves and gets the hit, strength 16. So, yeah, strength 16. It turns out that's a high amount of strength. So I block 9 and still take 7. Yeah, pretty brutal. So, pretty brutal. I do think that he probably should have blocked with something from hand rather than just with armor or whatever, but that was not a situation I was happy in. And I ended up taking a lot of damage. I do have a Sigil of Solace, which I immediately play to heal, so I'm up to 16. But yeah, that's the, all he did was play a single attack card from hand, and it came in for 16 damage. That is not something that most characters can offer. So, pretty wild. And that's kind of the strength of Kayo. You can get just this insane amount of pressure from those rolls sometimes. And now it'll be over to my opponent's turn, because all I did was heal that turn. He's going to pitch a Sigil to play a Blood Rush Bellow. So this is also not something that I like to see here. This is, it means he is going to quite probably have another big turn. This card's a CNC. I'm glad to see him lose a CNC, because the prospect of CNC 12 is just terrifying. I have a Flick Flack in Arsenal. I have 2 Flick Flacks in hand. I do have a combo card in hand. I'm hoping that I can defend this fairly well, but we'll see what happens. He ends up going for a Barraging Beatdown, so he's going to intimidate one of my cards. And I believe that, unfortunately for me, he actually intimidates my 1 combo card here. So I was hoping to play a Flick Flack, and then it would give the combo card the +2. And then I would be able to block with the combo card for +2. For 5, which would be great at shutting down the second claw. Each claw is coming in for 5 here. So my hope was to do, and so for this one, it is for 5, but I can actually answer it very efficiently by playing the Flick Flack for 3 from hand and the Flick Flack for 2 from Arsenal to block a total of 5. And then if I still had my combo card, I'd be able to use that from hand to block the next claw for 5, but unfortunately it was intimidated, so I don't. BTC_brew, thanks for the follow. BTC underscore brew. What does that username mean? Is BTC Bitcoin? What are you going for there? Also, what's a Bitcoin brew? If that is what it means. All right, so then second claw coming in for 5. I end up using the other Flick Flack from hand to block for 4. Not as good as using the combo card, but still very good. I count myself to be pretty lucky there. I think I only took 1 damage, and so that could have been a lot worse. And now I'm going to be able to do a classic Ira play where I will either be able to... I have my Tunic charge, so I can do Kodachi, second Kodachi, CNC for 7. Metagod says, Bitcoin Brew is my first warrior deck. All equipment and majestics paid for with Bitcoin. Well, well. Sun Cactus, thank you for the follow. Much appreciated. Second Kodachi coming in here. He blocks that one with his Scabskin Leathers, and then the good old Command and Conquer for 6. The Tunic being used there to allow me to do the 2 Kodachi swings into the Command and Conquer, rather than just Kodachi into the Command and Conquer. If the opponent's out of armor, it can be a good idea to just do the CNC for 7 because it will make them block with 3 cards from hand. But in this case, my opponent did still have some armor. He ends up double blocking that, preventing me from getting through with the Command and Conquer, but it is going to slow down his momentum. And I draw into another hand here. Let's see what he has to say. Only 3 cards, but Kayo doesn't need that many cards to do some major damage. He starts off by rolling his Barkbone Strapping, so this will give him half the roll rounded down in terms of energy. Rolling it up, hits the 6, so that's going to be 3 energy that he's going to get here. Pretty scary. Pretty scary. So now my opponent has 3 energy floating. He also rolls his Scabskin Leathers and gets a 5. So he has now 3 energy and 2 action points for free. But it's not really for free because what he did was take some chances and destroy his chest armor to do that. So the chest armor one is kind of free, but it's like, you're running that instead of running Tunic. So it's going to have the potential to give you more energy, but it's not as reliable, though it also doesn't have to charge up. So you could do that on the first turn if you really needed the energy. And then the Scabskin Leathers are basically paid for by the risk of potentially rolling bad. So he plays a Fyendal's or a Tome of Fyendal from hand. So it's not going to heal him, but it does draw him some more cards. And he still has an action point left thanks to the Scabskin Leathers. Now, if he had rolled a 1 here, he would just be kind of out of luck. But that's not what happens. Scabskin Leather's doing well for him. Scabskin's another kind of high variance card. If you do roll that 1, that could sometimes just be the game if you lose your tempo against a warrior or something, or an aggro ninja or whatever. But against a slower deck, it can be less risky to roll it. And there also is, of course, a good benefit that you can get from it. And then he actually just ends up coming in with a Cadaverous Contraband, which I consider not that bad. So this is coming in for strength 5, and if it hits, he's going to get I believe it is a non-attack action card from discard back to hand. So I'm thinking, I want to stop this. Don't let him get a Blood Rush. Or I don't think it's back to hand. It might get shuffled back to the deck or something. I don't know. This card is not that often played, so I don't really know the specifics of it. My apologies, guys. But either way, I decide that I don't want to give him the opportunity to do another Blood Rush Bellow. So now my turn is going to be very boring. It's going to be Kodachi for 1, Kodachi for 2. And I'll put this Razor Reflex into my arsenal. He blocks the first one, takes the second one. So blocking the first Kodachi can be a tactic you can use to mitigate Mask of Momentum, even if you don't have enough armor to block the second one. So that's just a little trick you can play. Metagod says, puts an action card on top of his deck, sets up his next turn. Okay. So yeah, pretty happy to not give him a Blood Rush Bellow or whatever on top of his deck. I think that would be very negative. It's interesting there. That's a card that's not often played, but it is a lot of pressure actually when you're trying to prevent them from getting that big stuff. And he comes in with another one, also for 5. The other good thing about these is that they are reliably going to be 5, which is going to usually require 2 cards to defend against. There isn't that risk of KO rolling badly and making it so the opponent can just 1 card block them, as there is with things that cost more than 5. Of course, that also means there isn't that chance of doubling it, but that's how it goes sometimes. So I'm going to do Kodachi for 1 with Go Again, and then follow that up with a simple Drone of Brutality for 7. It's 15 to 17, so I'm behind on life. My opponent has healed a few times, and I haven't been able to get any really big aggressive turns as I have in the past. My opponent heals again, using a yellow Sigil of Solace, I believe, to heal 2 and then take 5, I think. Or it might have been a red one, and he healed 3 and then took 4. I don't remember the specifics. But either way, he's going to end up with a fair number of cards and a life total only barely lower than my own. Well, I'm staring him down here. We're going to see what ends up happening here. Could be big, could be small. So that's the other thing about Chaos. Your turns are not all that consistent. I actually think that it might be a better idea. I'm not 100% sure, but I kind of feel like the club might be a better idea just for its consistency. I could be wrong, though. So he ends up rolling the Scabskin Leathers, rolling a 4 to give him 2 action points here. So 2 action points, that does mean that I have to start worrying about various things that could be pretty nasty. You know, he could do, you know, maybe he does some smaller attack at first to kind of try to lure out some blocks, and then he's going to follow that up with a CNC that could be a CNC 12. You know, that would be pretty nasty. I know that he's discarded 1 CNC this game because of... it was a random discard from his Blood Rush Bellow, I believe, but I think he still has another one on the deck, though I might be misremembering. So what he does here is he actually plays a potion and then does a Savage Feast. Coming in there, discarding a card that has Strength 6, so he'll draw a card, and then he's going to random up the damage here. Is this going to come in for 12, or is it going to be 3? Let's see what chance decides. There's a 4, so it's just going to be 3 from this Savage Feast, something that I quite like to see. And I'm going to block it out for 3, preventing any damage there. But it did draw him a card that he'll put in Arsenal, and he did also get a chance to play that Energy Potion this turn, which is going to power up a potential future turn. So now there's going to be a counter on my Fyendal's Spring Tunic. Up to 3 counters now. I'm going to do Kodachi. When he doesn't block, I play the Razor Reflex that I have in Arsenal to go up to a total of 5. He plays another Sigil to counter it. And then I'm going to throw a red Flick Flack in Arsenal, trying to get that Arsenal set up with a defense reaction in case that I need to use that against a Barraging Beatdown. And then I'm going to draw on up. And my opponent is going to go for a pitch here, pitching 2 different cards for the Command and Conquer. Let's see if he can roll up mega damage. Unfortunately, he does. Rolling the 6 on Command and Conquer, it's going to come in for 12, and if it hits, it will destroy that Flick Flack that I just got in my arsenal. So, pretty nasty situation. Looking at my hand, I could block this if I blocked with my whole hand and my mask. Then I could block a total of 12. But I do have 2 2-block cards, which mean that I can't just dump my hand against it. It's not a great situation to be in. On the other hand, I do have a somewhat aggressive hand, so I have to start thinking about, you know, do I want to try and do some more damage to him? How do I want to play it? I end up blocking for 5, and so I'm going to take 7, and I'm going to lose my red Flick Flack that I had in Arsenal. Not good. The Command and Conquer is a scary card. Normally, when Kayo rolls up Command and Conquer for 12, it's even worse. Now, on the other hand, we could have a game like the previous one, round 2, where the Command and Conquer comes in for 3, and then I'm very happy with that. But that's not what we saw that time. All right, so pitching Kodachi for 1. With go again. Opponent is, I think he takes that. Second Kodachi coming in for 2 with go again, and then I'm going to use my Tunic and play a Drone of Brutality for 6. He does block it. There's the Tunic. Here's the Drone of Brutality coming in for 6. And this is going to be a lot of damage that I'm now threatening. So that was a 9 damage turn despite only having 2 cards. Pretty strong. He ends up blocking, I think, 3 against that. So now 7 life to 8 life. Oops. Oh, yeah, we were discussing there. I wasn't sure if drone goes on bottom before or after pitch goes to the bottom because I'm not very familiar with that. I don't normally play drone. So now I'm drying up. Now, he only has 2 cards in hand, but he does have a card in Arsenal and an Energy Potion. So, like, really any turn could be quite dangerous at this point. I'm hoping that it isn't, but you never know. One other thing about claws is that claw is a weird weapon type because it doesn't have an attack reaction that goes with it. So there are some weapon types that don't get, so sword, dagger, club, and hammer all have attack reactions that are generic that buff them, namely razor reflex and pummel. But some of the more esoteric weapon types, such as I think claw and gun and pistol, do not have attack reactions that go with them. So as a result of that, the opponent doesn't have to be as worried. All right, so then we're coming in with another attack here. But he does half the damage this time. So instead of coming in for 16 like that earlier one, this one's going to come in for 4. I decided that I'm just going to take the damage here because it's going to enable a copy of Life for a Life. So then I'm going to say, all right, let's go for this. Let's be aggressive. I'm in the mode where I'm trying to turn around the tempo situation in the game and put myself in the driver's seat. So first Kodachi coming in for 1, hits him for 1. Life for a Life for 5, go again, and if it hits, I'll heal 1. Very, very strong. Life for a Life is can already be a pretty strong card, and when Ira is giving it +1, it is even stronger. He's going to go for a single block, so he takes 2, and I heal 1. Then I'm going to, so I could pitch here and do my Command and Conquer. I could also play the Torrent of Tempo from hand. Either way, I could be threatening a fair amount of damage here. We'll see. It ends up being the Torrent of Tempo. I'm not entirely sure why I did that. I think the Command and Conquer might have been better. I think what I was thinking, though, was that under these circumstances, he would likely want to defend the Torrent of Tempo with 2 cards anyway, for fear of giving me go again and giving me a strong follow-up, and therefore I could save the Command and Conquer for some other situation. If I was thinking that, my prediction was correct. So then he pitches and comes in with the Mandible Claws for 3. I'm looking at my hand. I see another copy of Life for a Life, and I'm thinking here, I could get hit by these Mandible Claws, go to 2 life, and then my Life for a Life has go again. Now, this is actually a major error because it now means that I'm in range of Reckless Swing. I got too greedy thinking about my copy of Life for a Life, so I was not thinking about the potential to end up getting killed by a Reckless Swing. And so here comes my Kodachi attack for 1 with go again. In general, just like you don't want to go to 1 life against Dorinthia because you might die to Steelblade Shunt, you don't want to go to 2 life against a Brute because you might die to Reckless Swing. But I was getting greedy. I was thinking about my Life for a Life rather than his Reckless Swing, and this has put me in a very dangerous position. So Life for a Life coming in for 5 again. This time he double blocks it. And now I think this is a good opportunity. I can pitch this Flying Kick, play the Command and Conquer that I have in Arsenal, and then put the Flick Flack into Arsenal for my defense in the future. And here comes the Command and Conquer. And that's actually game. And my opponent shows me a extremely unlucky thing. He actually had the Reckless Swing to kill me, but he didn't have a single card. He didn't have a single card that was an attack with Strength 6. His whole hand was non-attack actions. And as a result of that, even though he had the Reckless Swing to kill me after I imprudently dipped low to enable my Life for a Life to have go again, his draw, even though he hit the Reckless Swing, didn't have anything that could actually get the damage through. So I ended up prevailing there essentially by luck. I think in this situation, there's a very good chance under normal conditions that I just get killed. And so this is kind of an interesting example because it's a case where, I did win the game, but I feel like I didn't necessarily deserve it here, especially because I haven't used my Snapdragon Scalers. So I didn't need to go lower life than him in order to let that Life for a Life swing for 3. Or a swing with go again. I could have just used the Snapdragon Scalers to enable it instead. And that would have probably been also a strong play and would not have exposed me to the risk of dying to Reckless Swing. But because my opponent somehow didn't hit a single card with attack strength 6 or more, I ended up being able to survive even though he did draw it. So very fortunate moment there for me and kind of an indicator. I talk sometimes, normally people blame luck too much. Like, normally people assume they got unlucky when they lost and they don't improve because of that, because they're just blaming luck. But there are some games where luck is a big factor. And sometimes luck can be a big factor in games that you've won. So in this game right here, I made a crucial blunder that could have cost me the game, and I got lucky to live. And it's important to note that even though I won the game, I made a big mistake here, and this is something that's quite important. Don't go to 2 life against Brute. Similarly, in the second game, the second game I won and it wasn't really that close, but also, he failed all of his dice rolls that game for his KO ability. So that was one where, yes, I won. I won. Yeah, I had more than 20 life or whatever, but also, my opponent's dice were strongly against him, and essentially his hero ability ended up just neutering his attack power instead of allowing him to put on a lot of pressure. Whereas in the first game and the third game, he had a mix of good and bad rolls with KO's ability, and as a result, there was a mix of higher pressure than normal turns and lower pressure than normal turns. All right, so those were the 3 games that I played myself versus ArcboundGeek. And if you want to see ArcboundGeek's perspective, I believe that he broadcast that earlier today. I don't know if there's a VOD or anything, but he was showing his perspective of the game. I think that was also with player audio if you want to hear us talk. I thought I would go back and show my perspective as well as the commentary. I do enjoy playing Ira. I might play Ira more in the future. We'll have to see. But this was, normally I'm a Dorinthia guy, but this was specifically what he wanted to play against. And while I did win the 3 games, I think that there were definitely some very lucky breaks for me in there. I wouldn't say that the KO seems totally non-valid against Ira. I guess what I would say probably is that I'm not sure that the mandible claws are really doing that much in this situation. Maybe they are, maybe you want to have the claws just for those big blood rush turns. But I feel like this deck, the KO deck, is really low pressure on off turns. And I wonder if the club would be better just to kind of improve the pressure on some of those off turns. The problem also, though, is that because you don't know which turns are going to be off turns until you see the dice roll, it's kind of difficult to plan around that. But yeah, so these were some interesting games. This was myself versus ArcboundGeek, Ira versus KO. And yeah, that's going to do it for this one, guys. So we're going to be coming back later. I'm probably going to have some more games on Thursday around 5 o'clock p.m. And we will see what I have there. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be broadcasting yet. Might be something from the next version of the North American Playtest League. Might be something from the Discord Gauntlet event that I played in this weekend. Don't quite know yet, guys. But more to come on Thursday, if not sooner. There's a chance that I'll pick up some other games just for live broadcast and commentary as well. Thank you all for watching this. And if you want to see some strategy stuff, check out my blog at TowerNumberNine.com. But yeah, stay tuned for more Flesh and Blood, guys. Looking forward also to discussion of the future as we move towards the Monarch preview season, which should be coming up soon. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Thank you all for watching, and we will be coming back to you later with more Flesh and Blood content. Thanks again, guys, and I will catch you later.